Well, hello and welcome to another edition of Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham, where Team Needham discusses everything healthcare. I'm your host, Shawn Needham, along with my wonderful wife, Janet, and we are streaming live from the Team Needham Abode podcast studio. And we are super excited to have Ben Thompson on our show today. Ben, welcome to our show. Hello, Ben, are you there?
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Hello. Welcome to our show,
Great.
Ben.
Let me double check my speaker source. Okay, try again. 1, 2.
Can you hear me, Ben?
Yes, coming
All
in
right,
loud and
perfect.
clear. Thank you.
All
Great to
right.
be
Well,
here.
thank you for being on our show today to discuss tinnitus. So tell us a little bit about the history of how you got here.
Absolutely. So the history of how I got here is I decided to tackle a health problem that most doctors don't know what to do with. So I'm speaking to someone who has been to their doctor with a problem, whether that's their ears, something in their head, their gut, other parts of their body. It's a serious problem to the patient, and they go to the doctor trying to solve the problem, and they're told, hey, there's not much you can do about this, or sorry, you just have to manage it. I'm not sure what I can do for you. And that happens to people with many conditions, but I specifically decided to focus on tinnitus, also pronounced tinnitus, ringing in the ears. So ringing, hissing, constantly there. It's an invisible condition that can turn people's lives upside down. So what I've decided to dedicate my professional career to is to address this underserved population that gets dismissed by the normal medical field and offer effective treatments that I learned through going to through audiology residency, going to graduate school, and becoming a doctor in this field.
And so, what are some of the causes of? I know it as tinnitus, so I'm going to pronounce it tinnitus. What are some of the causes of tinnitus?
Great question. Yeah, so glad to be here. So, just to explain that a bit, the root causes are 80% of the time, they are one of three things or a combination of these three things. The root causes of tinnitus are commonly related to a hearing loss in the cochlea, the hearing organ. And the second common root cause would be stress in the central nervous system. And the third most common root cause would be issues related to the jaw or the neck, TMJ or cervical spine issues.
Janet, what questions do you have for Ben?
Well, he just talked about issues with the jaw. So I wonder if there's a lot of preventative, perhaps, with orthodontic or with your dental work, or how does that play into it? Because I've known people that have had like their orthodontist breaks their jaw and then realigns everything for them. I mean, is that kind of a predisposition for this? Is that what you're saying?
Occasionally, not for most people with tinnitus, but for some, I would say 20%, their tinnitus can be influenced by a nerve that goes alongside the hearing system. It's called the trigeminal nerve. It's the fifth cranial nerve, and that actually connects to the jaw and it connects to part of the neck. So when those issues are uh, you know, overactive, or they have significant inflammation or activity in them, then that can have some sort of neurological crosstalk, and then we can hear a sound on the left side, even though the issues could be coming from the neck or the jaw.
Okay.
In terms of prevention, yes, there are things to do to prevent jaw and neck issues. It's not really my specialty. Usually I collaborate with dental professionals on the jaw or osteopathic physicians on the neck.
So I do have a question. So Janet and I are two pharmacists that specialize in hormones, and I don't know a lot about this condition when it comes to hormone deficiencies, but I've heard women as they get postmenopause. And I might be putting you on the spot, Ben, and I apologize if I am, but I'm trying to educate myself. I heard women as they get postmenopause can have tinnitus. Is there anything that you've seen that hormones are related to tinnitus in women?
We see that. We see that with some of our patients, and we've worked with thousands. So I have a team of 12 doctors that I manage. We all specialize in tinnitus treatment as well as hearing loss treatment. We have clinics. We also have telehealth service. So we've seen a lot of patients, and a percentage of them are women, middle-aged women who are postmenopausal, who don't have a significant hearing loss, but they develop tinnitus. And there are different biorhythms in the body that can lead to some effects of tinnitus, postmenopausal women being one of them. The explanation of why exactly that happens can be fairly complex, and it's not so well understood in the research and amongst the scientists in our field. But we know that tinnitus is, in a sense, a barometer of the nervous system. It's a barometer of the body in a way. Just like stress can manifest itself as I'm not sleeping that well, I'm losing weight, or I'm not feeling quite right. The nervous system being out of balance or significantly stressed can create or increase tinnitus, ringing or hissing in the ears. If a woman's going through menopausal type changes, that can create different biorhythms in the body that can also shift or create tinnitus a bit. So there is that relationship, and we see it. And treatment is successful for those patients. They're not stuck with it either.
Well, I know people that have suffered from the condition, and it is, I mean, it interrupts their sleep. It literally, for lack of a better term, drives them crazy. I mean, I can't imagine having my ears ring all day. So tell me some of the treatments that you guys do. I'm going to stream your website here. Here's your website. Tell us some of the things that you do to help treat this condition.
What we do is we focus on, at the beginning, getting people better with sleep and getting some relief from the intensity of the sound. So we specialize in helping patients who have moderate to severe levels of tinnitus. This means they've already been to other doctors. They've tried a few things on their own. They've had this for longer than a month, sometimes longer than a year. They're really struggling. Their sleep is affected. Their concentration and attention is affected. It's created anxiety. It puts their body in a fight or flight response for a lot of the day. But at the same time, guys, this is invisible. So in many ways, this is like internal suffering. Unless we ask for help or we have resources, no one else can see it. No one else can hear it. It's one of these things that can really bring us down. It's persistent. It's intrusive. The treatments for this often focus on these two pillars. One of them is a sound-based treatment, and the second is a cognitive-based treatment. So patients who I've worked with, for example, get the best results when they optimize those two systems, because the ringing sound, the hissing sound, it's not set in stone. It's a neurological condition, and it can get better with treatment. It rarely goes down to 0 on a 1 to 10 scale. It rarely goes completely away, but getting it down to a 1 or a 2 out of 10 is success, because there's millions of people that have that level of tinnitus, including myself, who are living full, normal, productive lives. So that's the goal, is to bring people who have, a 4, a 5, an 8, a 10, like that level of sound. And over time through a treatment, bring them down to the mild category where it's essentially normal or manageable to have that level of tinnitus. Sound-based treatment often includes something called sound therapy, which I learned through my direct mentor, who's the grandfather of tinnitus research, Dr. Jastroboff. Very, very great story I can share there. He actually worked with William Shatner to treat his tinnitus, which was publicly shared in People magazine in the 1990s. And where William Shatner wrote a story, he wrote a journal article with People magazine about how he suffered with tinnitus for 5 years. He lost hope. He developed it after a loud noise explosion on the scene in Star Trek as Captain Kirk. And then he was struggling with it for years. And he was introduced to this method called tinnitus retraining therapy, where he worked with the specialist, my mentor, for two things: the sound-based component, where he had some medical devices on his ears playing specific white noise type sounds for a treatment period, and then also changing the cognitive response or reaction to the sound with specific coaching, counseling, and more strategies in that realm. So still today, those two pillars are the most effective to drive the tinnitus down. And we often use hearing aids as a physical device, and then specialized counseling techniques and protocols to follow for sleep, for anxiety, for stress, all related to tinnitus.
I remember hearing about that story or reading about it, 30 some years ago. William Shatner's hearing issues. That's a great story. So I have to ask, rating the severity of it, is it a subjective measure? And you tell somebody you have a 10, or do you have a 1 now, or how do you rate the severity of tinnitus?
There are subjective and objective measurements of it. The subjective measurements are more commonly used amongst researchers and scientists and doctors to measure success. We quantify the subjective sound, similar to if someone says, "Oh, I was diagnosed with clinical depression," we go, "Well, how?" It was a subjective questionnaire, but there is a specific number, and it is evidence based. Similarly with tinnitus, that's the main tool that we measure outcomes and progress with. There are some objective measurements, but they're limited. They don't explain the nuances of what someone's dealing with. And here's an interesting point, guys, is that the loudness of tinnitus sound is not correlated with how much it bothers people or how much impact it has on someone's life. And it's a hard one to even at surface level. It's like, that doesn't make sense. But the thing is that this intrusive sound can dominate the nervous system. It can dominate our attention so much that even a relatively soft sound can become a huge problem in someone's life when they can't escape it. They're trying to run from it, but it's inside of their own head. So it creates a lot of these more mental health, anxiety, stress, insomnia issues that are really real. I want to share a story about a pharmacist that worked with us. So his name's Steve. He's a pharmacist in New York City, and he worked with us for treatment for tinnitus. But what I wanted to share was that in his story, he's a working licensed pharmacist. He did research into, okay, is there any medication for this? Is there any herbal supplements that actually work for this? And he came to the conclusion of there were not any evidence-based pills in any shape that were going to help his tinnitus. However, he told me that he still tried these herbal supplements that are sold on the internet for tinnitus. They're not FDA approved. They're not regulated. They frankly don't work and probably are just placebo. But he was really struggling, and he was so desperate that he said, "What do I have to lose? There's no negative side effects." And I think that really touches on how significant of a problem this is, that the logical mind says this won't work, but the emotional person is like, I have nothing to lose. This is such a big problem in my life.
So is it true that for some people it just becomes obsessive at night, like when they're trying to sleep, that's the time that it just impacts them the most, and that's why they're not sleeping?
It's true. It's true. There's two stats that I think are very important. Number one is that the biggest problem people with tinnitus report is they have trouble sleeping because of it. Number two is that for military veterans in the United States, the number one service-connected disability is tinnitus.
I'm guessing that's because they're around loud explosions and things like that.
Mostly to do with hearing loss, noise-induced hearing loss from service, and it's less of an issue in modern, military just personnel. But yeah, in the Vietnam era, for example, no one was talking about hearing protection or earplugs or anything like that.
Yeah, that's for sure. So tell us another six. Tell us let us know about that pharmacist. Did you have a success story with him?
Yes.
Yeah,
So I was in New York. I was hosting. So I've created a YouTube channel about 6 years ago, and in the small world of tinnitus, I have helped a lot of people through videos, just like you guys are doing. Just, information, education, encouragement, and I hosted an event in New York City where I invited everyone to come and meet me, and we had some guest speakers. And one of the guest speakers we had was this man, Steve, who did reduce his tinnitus significantly. He did follow a treatment protocol with us, and he was sharing that he's a lot better now, that his tinnitus is mild. He manages it totally fine. It was severe, but after about a 6 to 8 month period of following the protocol, daily sound therapy, he used devices on his ears for about 6 to 8 hours a day. He followed the specific protocols for sleep, anxiety techniques, stress techniques. 6 to 8 months later, neuroplasticity happened, and his tinnitus is much more manageable. And that interview is public on our YouTube channel of him at the event in New York, sharing his story. So definitely relevant to bring it in front of you guys, two pharmacists.
Yeah, right. And you're right. I mean, we get questions
very
often about tinnitus.
Yep.
And, as pharmacists, we don't have a good answer. And I will say, I think most of them are middle-aged women.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, but that's the population we are engaging. But it seems to be more common that it starts, if they experienced it prior, it just becomes bigger as they are going through these changes. And I do think there is a dynamic there, because even just your mouth, your teeth, and your oral health changes. They can have dry mouth going through menopause. So there's, why would we not think that there's other things that can manifest? But sleep during peri and menopause, sleep deprivation is very, very common in women. So, if you can address that, then you can handle things, right? Like you mentioned cortisol. Well, it's a huge thing. If you are always in that stress mode, in that flight mode, then things just don't calm down and get better for you. And so, I can see how managing that, even just in itself, with being able to handle something that you are going to perceive the outcome to be different, or you can address this with, all the other techniques that you're working on. Because if you're always in that flight mode, your body's like at attention, like we are going to have to preserve life.
Absolutely. It's subconscious. I mean, I've slowly learned about these things over the last 10 years, but it's amazing how much it dictates our emotions, our energy, our sense of enjoyment, is the nervous system, how it can affect different health outcomes, stress, creating chemical reactions in our body. All that's sub-awareness, subconscious. We're not able to see it. So I'm fascinated to learn about it more and more.
So is there any chance of relapse? Do you hear of any of your patients that, fix them, you get it under control, and it relapses a few years later?
We see thousands of patients, so we've seen it all. That is quite rare. So when someone gets this in a better place, then vast majority of cases, keep their results. So if someone has, they develop severe tinnitus, they have a treatment. The treatment effectiveness rate is between 80 and 85%. And if someone is successfully treating their tinnitus, that's going to hold. The results will hold. They may have, similar to if someone has a knee surgery, they're going to wear a knee brace and they're going to do physical therapy. For us, the knee brace would be these medical devices on the ears. The physical therapy would be the one-on-one sessions that are more around the coaching, cognitive, and more psychological side of this. Once Once
Oh, go
once
ahead.
that's healed, then the person doesn't need to wear a knee brace. They can be back on the field, but they're not 100%. They're still a little cautious on certain movements, playing with their kids in the yard, etc.
Right.
So similar for us, we want to make sure someone's wearing earplugs when they go to a concert.
Right.
We want to make sure someone's nervous system is in relatively good health so that they have a low risk of their tinnitus spiking up again.
Okay, yeah, that makes total sense. So tell us a little bit more about these devices. I think it's on your website, right? It kind of shows
Yeah,
a picture of it.
yeah, definitely. So these are medical devices that are designed for tinnitus and or hearing loss. And for tinnitus, they provide what's called sound therapy treatment, and that follows the protocol of tinnitus retraining therapy. And then for the hearing clarity part of it, turns out that 90% of patients with tinnitus also have some degree of loss of hearing. Even if it's slight, even if it's mild, to get the best tinnitus treatment results, we often correct the hearing loss with the same hardware, the same technology, and that can improve tinnitus outcomes as well as some hearing clarity. And I know that part of our discussion here, we wanted to highlight longevity. So there's research study called the Achieve study, and it found that for individuals, older adults who are at risk of dementia and cognitive decline, that for those individuals who have hearing loss, when they treat their hearing loss, it reduces the risk or the rate of cognitive decline by about 50% compared to individuals who have the hearing loss who don't treat their hearing loss. And that was a huge study because it actually put treating hearing loss as one of the top modifiable risk factors for cognitive health. And guys, I'm sure you feel this way too. But when I discuss cognitive health, taking care of our brain, that is a huge motivator for my patients. They have family with dementia, Alzheimer's, cognitive decline. They don't want to get there. Do you guys talk to people in that age demographic? And maybe we can spend some time on that topic. It's really, I think it's really important.
Well, and it makes sense, I mean, our hearing, just like our eyesight, I saw a study one time or a questionnaire about, what would you rather lose, your hearing or your eyesight? I mean, that's a really, really tough question. Both of them are so important. And how can we not think that both of those sensory organs, areas in our body are not important for longevity? I mean, because they are, our hearing. Think about, and if you think about it ancestrally speaking, which Janet and I talk about ancestrally speaking a lot when it comes to movement, when it comes to diets. If you couldn't hear 300-400 years ago, or you couldn't see, there would be a really, really big problem living.
Absolutely. I think about that sometimes about, eyeglasses that so many adults wear eyeglasses, and before they were invented, what did everyone do?
Right.
Seriously. And yeah, the connection between hearing and cognition or cognitive health, it's mostly looking at how social isolation is one of the biggest risk factors for rates of cognitive decline. And I like to use this expression with my patients. I want your brain to live as long as your body.
Right.
Yeah.
So hearing people clearly, all things equal, makes someone more likely to stay engaged with their friends and family, to go out to dinner, to be in a social group, to leave their house, to get on a phone call and talk to someone, to go on a walk with someone. If they can't hear, and it's just stressful or uncomfortable to be there, or there's a lot of cognitive load to try to understand the words when I only hear 60% of the sounds, that's the kind of behavior that drives someone to stay at home by themselves. And, God forbid, if they live alone, well, that just makes it even worse.
Yeah. I've been in situations like that, especially loud environments, a lot of background noise. And I'm sure as I'm aging, I'm a typical male, and there's a lot of frequencies I can't hear anymore. And it's very frustrating. I mean, it is very frustrating. You do your best to try to hear, but you don't want to keep telling people, what? Will you repeat that?
Absolutely. And have you gotten a hearing test? Let's check those ears. Come on.
Well, I I have. I'm actually a um, uh, unfortunately and fortunately, I ran sound for concerts and stuff, and I've been to lots of rock concerts. So I've tested my hearing with all their frequency devices on what frequencies I can hear. And up until a few years ago, I could hear up to 16,000 hertz. I think I'm down to about 13 now. Unfortunately, as men age, they can't hear higher pitched things, and that's why we can't hear our wives.
You're speaking about maybe the most important topic of this podcast. What's the difference between hearing loss of the physiological hearing system versus selective hearing of I'm choosing
right.
And I will be very honest. I hire a coach to help me because if I need help with something, honestly, there's a lot of selective. So I will admit that. But but there is some frustration, I think, in, like you touched on, in relationships. And when I look over my mom, isolation was really difficult during the pandemic, and it took a lot of years off of her, I think, because that interaction with humans is super important. I mean, if we didn't bond to our mother, we failed to thrive. And I think that is something we forget as we age, no matter what age group we're in. We have to interact with other humans to feel healthy and to thrive throughout our life. So hearing is super important. I mean, it shouldn't be, oh wow, I agree with that, because the social isolation, I think, is a lot more miserable than what people realize. I don't think they understand how impactful that is. I know we looked at, the younger population after they weren't with their friends, and they were making bonds, as they are aging. Well, the elderly, or even middle aged, as we get older, the less social interaction we have, the less healthier we are. So that's huge. So addressing hearing is not something that we should, put on the back, because I think sometimes we have a stigma that if I have a hearing aid, that means I'm aging.
For both of you guys, for example, if you turn your head to the side, you guys have the kind of hair around your ear where literally no one would ever see a hearing aid on you.
Really? Even me?
Even you. Even you. Even you. That's because from the side and the front, they're not noticeable.
Yeah.
From the back, you can see it. It's a small device. It's discreet. It's very lightweight. So there's definitely a stigma about hearing devices, but there's also a shift going on where everyone has something on their ears today.
I was going to say, right?
We're in a shift where, for example, I have conversations with patients who they're starting tinnitus treatment, and we have medical devices they're going to wear on their ears for between 6 and 8 hours per day, and they look similar to hearing aids, right? Mm-hmm. And we pick a color for the piece up and behind the ear. There's a color which is called tech black. And I think that speaks to how, if I have something that's just sort of a more technology looking color, then suddenly it doesn't look like a medical device. It looks like, just a Bluetooth device.
Yeah, right, for sure. Mm. So bringing that up, so I'm sure you've gotten, since you're an expert in this field, I'm sure you've gotten this question. There is a lot of talk about the frequencies that Bluetooth devices put out. What are your thoughts about that? Where it comes to AirPods or whatever, what are your thoughts about that?
Yes, some people are concerned that, hey, there's been no generation that's lived with Bluetooth for their whole lives, or, my grandparents didn't have this. Is this safe? Those types of sounds they're actually not sound waves. Those are electromagnetic frequencies. I haven't gone into the depths of understanding really what that means, but there's an important point that I think will help people understand if there is a risk for any kind of, radiation, which is certain waves of energy. They have different frequencies or cycles per second, because this is a wave. So, imagine a wave in an ocean. I surf, for example, right? So the good waves, they come every 14 seconds, for example. So that's just a very low frequency. They're very, they take a long time between each wave. Sound waves are much higher frequency. The human hearing system, we hear most of speech sounds between 500 hertz, which is the way to measure frequency, between 500 and 4,000 hertz. So 4,000 cycles per second. So that's how quickly these waves move. Now, other waves like Bluetooth, even though they're not acoustic, those are electromagnetic, solar energy, all these types of things. There are some sound or some waves that can kind of like penetrate our skin, right? That's why we can get an X-ray. So an X-ray can penetrate the skin and I can look at the bones. Certain sounds of such a high frequency, they can't penetrate the skin. The eardrums, they can collect more sound. They're designed to collect a pretty broad range of sound from 20 hertz all the way up to 20,000 hertz. And our physical bodies can receive low frequency sound or low pitch sound like bass. So when I'm at a concert, I can feel the bass, in my body. And I think that understanding that will at least, help people, because if it's purely an acoustic sound, well, you won't be damaged by what is, you'll only be damaged by something that can actually enter your system. So if it's a 30,000 hertz sound that only a cat can hear, well, you'll never even hear that. It can bounce off you. It does nothing.
Right.
Electromagnetic frequencies, it's not my specialty. I am curious about it on a personal level. I haven't done enough research to know, what's safe, what's not, and all that.
Well, I think as Jan and I talk a lot when it comes to any kind of thing that we're exposed to, first of all, keep your body healthy in the first place, and you'll be able to be exposed to a lot of different things. Maybe obviously there's things we should minimize being exposed to. But first and foremost, you have to focus on your sleep, your diet, and your exercise. And that will give you a strong body overall. So if there are any kind of frequencies out there that might be hurting us, our bodies can respond appropriately.
Absolutely. When I hear you say that, sleep, diet, and exercise, I'm asking myself, where do I stand on that? And I hope everyone else is too. For me personally right now, diet, exercise are good. Sleep is not where it could be. It seems like sometimes there's that give and take of, do I have a social life and am I working out and am I sleeping? I feel like it's just, for me, it's always been something's got to give amongst those three.
Right. And we say this all the time, honestly, Ben, sleep trumps it all. That's when our bodies get stronger. That's when we recover. That's sleep is more important than diet. I mean, we will die without sleep before we'll die without food. Those are just facts.
Yeah. We just had daylight savings time, here in the US. And I took that as a challenge to, instead of wake up at 7 a.m. every day, wake up at 6 a.m. every day, which technically was the same time for my body.
Right.
Try to go to sleep a little earlier, and it's a rocky start, but I think I have a chance of keeping the habit.
Right. It's a lifelong journey. I think, we try to get better all the time. So, Ben, as we wrap this podcast up, tell us where people can go to your website, sign up.
If someone has tinnitus and they're wondering, hey, how significant is my tinnitus? Is this something I should worry about? How bad is it? What should I do about it? We created a resource called tinnitusquiz.com and created that about 3 years ago. If you go to our website, Treble Health, you'll see it's under the resources, or you can just type in tinnitusquiz.com into Google, and then you can take a free online assessment to understand what is the impact of your tinnitus, and then we'll give you a recommendation for something you can do as a next step. So that's available right now. And then if you wanted to speak with a doctor about your tinnitus, we have telehealth consultations that we offer. So you can reach out to our website, treblehealth.com. You can schedule a complimentary telehealth consultation where we can meet you for about 15 or 20 minutes, understand the root cause of your condition, explain what options you have for treatment. And if one of those was to work with our team at Treble Health, either at our physical locations, we have 4 physical clinics across the country, or with our telehealth treatment program, then we'd be able to help you out at that time. So that's how you can get in touch with me, or follow us on YouTube at Treble Health, where we have 175,000 subscribers, and we've been going hard on making videos here for the last 6 years.
Awesome. Well, that does remind me, we are streaming live on YouTube right now. So please share it to your site if you could. We'd appreciate that. And we appreciate you being on today, Ben. You've helped us realize our goal, which is to educate and empower individuals to take charge of their own health. So thank you so much.
So glad to be here, and thank you guys for the opportunity.
And listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning in to Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. Tune in Monday to our regularly scheduled podcast, 12:30 to 1:30 Pacific Standard Time. Thank you.